about the summer snow. When it falls on you, your blood runs cold. But don't you sweat your pretty skin, 'cause it melts away for it sinks in. And you dream about this very night, when the moon runs down the summer sky. Could it be the morning of the spring?
So I'm actually really excited for this project. I am upstairs in what I refer to as the yellow bedroom. Upstairs, there are 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a little kitchenette actually, and a full living room just upstairs. So this bedroom that I'm standing in used to be completely bright yellow. And what I have done to date is I have totally painted everything in here. This pretty white, it's Silo's white by Magnolia Homes, and painted all of the trim. And so now I am ready to come in and to add a little bit more character back to the space. And I have chosen a really beautiful wallpaper that I'm gonna hang today. And so I'm gonna show you kind of the layout of the room, gonna get set up, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start installing, because it's gonna be a big change.
When the sea runs dry, we start to say, have you heard from the sky all about it? Down the river, high tide flows around it. Through the whispers of pines, I hear them sing. The more you love, the more you live. Do you ever feel like going back when nothing seemed to be a drag?
For this project, I ordered a kit from Amazon that came with the brushes, the X-Acto knife, a roller, the seam smoother, and also an edging tool. All of that was about $15, and I'm going to place a link to that below. I also brought up a level, some brushes, and a couple of other items that I thought at the time would help me with the project. And as you'll see, I began marking the walls here for my initial set of panels, and in doing that I actually took a pencil and marked the wall itself so that I had my first piece of paper on perfectly straight and level. I did that starting in my corner and then working all the way around this first wall so I knew where each piece would be hung. In the end, you'll see that was something that was kind of a boo-boo. I should not have marked the walls, because I did end up having a line that was visible through the papers. Because of the angles on the wall, what I did was I measured to the highest point for that particular piece, and that's how I knew where to cut. Once I had my measurements, I went ahead and I rolled out the sheet of paper on the floor, and then I began to make my cuts. This particular wallpaper was a paste the wall, so I applied my paste, and then once I knew that I had everything good and saturated, I was ready to begin applying the wallpaper. This first corner was very important for me to take my time and make sure that it was level, because this is the area where I am setting up for the rest of my project. My friend Nikki came over during this stage and was able to give me a really good helping hand. And of course, the manager on duty, Daytona, made sure that she did plenty of site checks to ensure the quality of the installation. Apparently, Daytona reported some issues, and Darlington decided that he needed to have a look at the quality as well. This is a very important part of the project, so he came in and out to make sure that the first piece was just right. And of course, Nikki had to give him scratches too. Once the first piece of wallpaper was in, the second piece went in relatively easily, and the trick was really just trimming around the door, and you can see Nikki helping me do that. And then also up at the ceiling. The baseboards were a little uneven, but because the baseboards were there, we had a nice even line to cut on. So it did at least make that part easy. Here you'll see that what I was able to do by this point is identify a good place for us to find a repeat in the paper. And once I would find the repeat, I would match that up on the wall and then cut a piece right there in place. I wasn't too worried about how the edges look because I knew I would trim that off. And then I would paste the wall, install that, and then I would smooth out any of the air bubbles that were in there and make sure everything was nice and level and clean. And then I would go around the edges just a little at a time with the X-Acto knife and cut off the excess paper. So that way everything followed the lines of the ceiling and the door. You know what? Finding that little bird tail is the easiest way to line it.
Yeah, it really is. There's just always that one little thing.
Having gotten around the cubby door, thinking that was the hardest part of this particular wall, Nikki asked if she could try installing some of the wallpaper, and I thought that this section would be a nice, easy run where we had a pretty much straight wall without a lot to cut around, and she got to try on this one. Not that I was an expert by any means, but I had now installed 5 pieces of wallpaper, and therefore I was the resident expert. However, as you can see, it took over an hour for us to install this one piece, and what we could not figure out is it seemed as if the pattern was listing a little upward from left to right. We could not figure out why it was doing that, so we kept detaching it and trying to straighten it, and then detaching it again and straightening it again, and we did this for a long time before we figured out it was actually the shape of the wall itself causing the pattern to drift in that fashion. And by that point it was starting to get a little darker in the evening, and we were working by lamplight. So once we got this piece installed, we called it a day. On day 2, I began the same as I did the day before, but for those of you who are watching this and would like to use this as a tutorial, let me show you some of the step-by-step pieces, this time a little slower and close up. My first step was to align the pattern so that way I could get an idea of where I would need to cut. Everything was stretched all the way down to the floor, so once I had aligned the pattern and allowed for some overlap at the top and the bottom, I went ahead and I made my cut on the paper. As mentioned, my wallpaper is a paste the wall type of wallpaper. So my step 2 was to take the wallpaper adhesive and apply it directly to the wall. And what I found worked best for me was that I wanted a thick enough layer that I knew everything was well coated and wouldn't dry during the application process. However, I didn't want it so thick that I could actually see visible amounts of it on the wall. And the way that I could tell it was too thick is my paste had a pink tone to it. If I saw any of the pink building up in an area, then I knew that it was too thick. And ultimately, when I went to smooth the wallpaper out, that just meant that the glue was getting pushed out and making a mess as I was smoothing the paper down. So I tried to eliminate that as much as I could as I was applying the paste. Step 3 was to match the pattern on the wallpaper between the 2 pieces and begin to press the new piece into the pasted wall. I identified a section of the wallpaper, you heard me talk about it on the day 1 video, that it was just a portion of the bird's tail, and that made it easy for me to find and match the pattern on each piece of paper. Once I did that, I just aligned the seams as best I could and began hand smoothing the paper. The paper is really easy and pliable to shift around on the wall just by using your hand to shift it. And once it was roughly in place, then I began pressing it down along the entire length of the wall. As I went, if I noticed any seams that were not sticking perfectly or any areas that seemed like the glue had already dried out, I simply pulled the paper back and applied some fresh adhesive to the wall and then pressed the wallpaper back down. Step 4 was to use my scraper tool to smooth any air bubbles out, and I worked from the top of the wall from left to right, smoothing out any air bubbles and working those down and towards the edges, so that way any of the bubbles would come out, and any extra glue also came out during that time, and I just simply scraped that away and put that back into my container that held my adhesive. Step 5 was to take the X-Acto knife and to trim any of the excess away from the wall and the baseboards. To help me do this, I found that using the smoothing tool as an edger allowed me to keep really nice clean lines and to follow any of the dips and turns in my wall, since my walls are not even. And I found that that just kept everything really easy and clean, and I was able to pull the paper away smoothly using this method. Once I had trimmed both the top and the bottom excess away from the wall, I moved on to step 6, which is to roll the seams. And this step helps to eliminate any visible seam that you may see. And it's never perfect, but it does make it much, much better, and it smooths out that line.
Right until your legs gave way, then you cried and got back up again. And it's real to think that I could fly across a broken bridge in the fading light. Never thought ahead of my 2 feet. Never had a care in the world, you see. Have you heard from the sky all about it? Down the river, high tide flows around it. Through the whispers of pines, I hear them sing. The more you love, the more you live. Have you heard from the sky all about it? Down the river, high tide flows around it. Through the whispers of pines, I hear them sing. The more you love, the more you live. Have you heard from the sky?
Okay guys, so I have to tell you a confession about this room. First of all, it's beautiful. The wallpaper in here is absolutely beautiful. Great call on the wallpaper, right? So I slowly spin around so you can see there's really nothing wrong with this room. Which is why what I'm about to tell you actually kind of makes me sad, but I'm also really happy.